My name is Carmen. I'm 50 years old. And if you picture an ordinary cleaning lady, you're probably right. I work at one of the biggest law firms in the city. A place where people talk about millions, where deals decide people's fates, and I just clean the floors. For them, I don't exist. I'm part of the background. Something they walk past without even noticing. If they ever see me, it's only because someone spilled coffee. Every morning, I walk through those shiny glass doors. Marble floors. Mirrors on the walls. Expensive perfume floating in the air. Voices full of power and confidence. They walk by, talking about court cases, about winning and losing. And I quietly open my cleaning cart, pull out the mop, and start working. Like I always do. I used to think that was normal. To be invisible. To never speak. But being invisible has its advantages. When no one notices you, you hear everything. Things you're not supposed to hear. That night, the office was almost empty. Darkness outside the windows. Just the hum of the lights and my footsteps on the floor. I was cleaning near the big conference room when I heard voices. Usually, I ignore them. But this time, the words made me freeze. No one will ever find out. The documents will disappear. It's just business. The voice was sharp. Cold. Like a knife. I felt chills run down my back. My hands started to shake. I moved closer. Quietly. So quietly I could hear my own heartbeat. The glass door was slightly open. And through that narrow gap, I saw them. Two men. One of them I knew, one of the top partners in the firm. The kind of man who never looks down when he talks to you. The other? A client in an expensive suit. Their faces were tense. Their voices low. But every word hit me like a hammer. We need someone to take the fall. Someone young. Someone easy to blame. And what if someone talks? A laugh. Cold. Cruel. Who? The cleaning lady? The partner chuckled without even turning around. She's been here for 10 years and never said a word. They don't see. They're nothing. Nothing. That word burned like fire inside me. But even worse. I understood what they were saying. They were going to destroy someone's life. Frame an innocent person. I gripped the handle of my mop so hard my fingers hurt. And I listened. It's perfect. His name's Alex. The intern. No connections, no money. Who's going to believe him? You sure? 100%. And if he doesn't play along, we'll make sure he never talks. Then they laughed again. And that sound, it made my stomach twist. I backed away slowly, praying the floor wouldn't creak. My heart was pounding so loud, I thought they'd hear it. When the door finally closed behind them, I stayed there. Standing in the dark hallway, trying to breathe. One thought kept spinning in my head, what do I do now? I'm just a cleaning lady. Who's going to believe me? Nobody. To them, I'm a shadow. But I knew, if I stayed silent, an innocent man would lose everything. That night, I walked out of the building with trembling hands. The city lights were glowing, cars rushing by, people living their lives. And me? I felt like my world had split in two, before and after. Because now I had a choice. Stay silent and remain invisible. Or speak up, and risk everything. This was only the beginning. And I had no idea how much it would cost me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the words echoing in my head like a broken record. We need someone to take the fall. His name's Alex. Alex. A name I'd never heard before, but now it was burned into my memory. Who was he? And why him? Morning came, but it didn't feel like morning. It felt like a storm that hadn't started yet. I walked into the office as usual, pushing my cart, head down. People passed by, laughing, talking about weekend plans. And then I saw him. He couldn't have been more than 23. A skinny kid with messy hair and a cheap suit that didn't fit. He was holding a stack of files so high, I thought he might drop them. And yet, he smiled at everyone. That smile, the kind that says, I still believe in the good in people. And all I could think was, they're going to destroy him. I watched him for a moment. He went straight to the senior lawyer's office, knocked politely, and stepped inside. I walked past slowly, pretending to clean, and I heard it. The voice of the man from last night. Cold. Sharp. Alex, we need you to do something for us. His tone made my stomach twist. Minutes later, Alex came out. He looked confused. Not scared yet, but something in his eyes had changed. I wanted to grab him, to warn him, to say, run, get out now before it's too late. But what could I do? If I told him, would he even believe me? A cleaning lady? I went back to work, but my mind wasn't on mopping floors anymore. It was on him. On the voices behind that door. On the laughter that still rang in my ears. That afternoon, I heard the news. People were whispering in the hallway, their voices like knives. Did you hear? Someone leaked client files. Guess who? The intern. Alex? No way. Yes. They're firing him today. My heart stopped. I stood there with my mop in my hands, frozen, as the words kept coming. They say he emailed confidential info. Big scandal. He'll never work in law again. And just like that, they did it. They ruined him. I saw him later, walking out of the office. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he stuffed papers into a cheap backpack. People stared at him like he was dirt. Like he didn't even deserve to breathe the same air. He didn't argue. Didn't fight. Just left. And that smile, the one I saw in the morning. It was gone. When the elevator doors closed behind him, I felt something inside me snap. My whole life, I'd stayed silent. I'd kept my head down. I told myself, it's not my problem. But this was different. I couldn't forget his eyes. I couldn't forget the sound of their laughter when they said my name didn't matter. And for the first time in 20 years, I decided to fight back. I didn't know how yet. I didn't know what it would cost me. But I knew this, if I stayed silent now, I'd never forgive myself. This wasn't just about Alex anymore. It was about me. About every invisible person they've ever stepped on. And I was done being invisible. That night, I stayed in the office later than usual. My heart was racing the whole time, but I didn't care. I had a plan. A simple, dangerous plan, find proof. Because words mean nothing. No one would believe the cleaning lady said so. They'd laugh in my face. They'd say I made it up for attention. No. I needed evidence. The building was almost empty. Just the soft hum of the lights and the echo of my footsteps on the marble floor. My hands were sweating inside the old rubber gloves as I pushed my cart down the hallway. I stopped in front of their office. The one where I heard everything. The door was locked. Of course it was. But I knew something they didn't: cleaners have keys. They trust us with access because we're invisible. I pulled the master key out of my pocket and slowly turned it in the lock. The click sounded like thunder in the silence. Inside, the office smelled like expensive leather and power. Dark wooden furniture. Shelves lined with law books no one probably read. I turned on a small lamp, just enough light to see. My heart pounded as I opened drawers, one by one. Contracts. Client files. Nothing unusual. Then I checked the bottom drawer, locked. I knelt down, pulled a thin wire from my cart, something I usually use for cleaning tight spaces. Tonight, it became something else. It took me 3 tries, but finally, the lock gave way. And there it was. A small flash drive. Black. Unmarked. Lying on top of a folder labeled "Confidential." I grabbed both. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped them. I slipped them into my cleaning apron and closed the drawer, careful to make everything look untouched. Then I heard footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming closer. My breath caught in my throat. I froze, every muscle screaming, "Hide." The steps stopped right outside the door. A hand touched the doorknob. I held my breath so long I thought I'd pass out. Then, the sound of a phone ringing. A man's voice muttered something, and the footsteps moved away. I didn't wait. I turned off the lamp, slipped out of the office, and closed the door as quietly as I could. My heart was still pounding when I stepped into the empty hallway. That night, I didn't go home right away. I went to a small diner across town. Sat in the corner with a cup of coffee and stared at that flash drive like it was a live bomb. Because that's what it was. A bomb that could blow up lives, including mine. What was on it? Emails? Contracts? Something about Alex? I didn't know yet. But I knew one thing, it was dangerous. If they found out I had it. I didn't even want to imagine what they'd do. For the first time in years, I felt truly afraid. Not the kind of fear you get when bills are late or the rent goes up. This was different. This was the fear that comes when you realize, you're in over your head. But then I thought of Alex. The way he walked out of that building with his head down, his whole future gone. And I knew, I couldn't turn back now. The question was, what was I willing to risk? My job? My safety? My life? As I walked home in the cold night air, gripping that tiny flash drive in my pocket, I whispered to myself. Whatever it takes. The next morning, I walked into the office like nothing happened. Like I was the same woman who spent her nights scrubbing floors and keeping her head down. But I wasn't the same. Not anymore. Because in the pocket of my old coat, was the truth. The flash drive felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Every time someone walked by, I felt like they knew. Like they could hear it clicking inside my pocket. I cleaned desks. Emptied trash cans. Smiled when people spoke to me. All the while, my mind was screaming, you need to get this out of here. Now. But how? Who could I trust? Not the police. Not the firm. If those men had this much power, one wrong move and I'd disappear without a trace. There was only one option, the press. I didn't know any journalists personally, but I knew where to find them. So, that evening, when the office emptied out, I slipped into the staff lounge and used an old computer. I typed slowly, my hands shaking. Anonymous tip. Major law firm covering up fraud and framing employees. Proof attached. But I stopped. Staring at the blinking cursor. If I sent this, there was no going back. I thought about Alex. About his face when they fired him. And I hit send. For the first time in years, I felt free. Like I'd done something that mattered. But that feeling lasted about 2 hours. Because the next day, everything changed. The partners were in chaos. The air in the office felt thick, like a storm before lightning. People whispered. Did you hear? Someone leaked confidential files. They think there's a mole. Security's checking everyone. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. And then, his voice. The one I hated. The one from that night. We'll find out who did this. And when we do, they'll regret it. I kept my head down, mopping the floor, pretending I didn't hear. Pretending I wasn't shaking inside. That afternoon, 2 men in suits walked past me, carrying a list. They're checking emails, phone records, everything. My heart almost stopped. Then one of them said something that froze me completely. They'll start with the cameras. Someone was here late last night. Cameras. How could I be so stupid? Of course there were cameras. Every hallway, every office. They'd see me. They'd see me in his office. I tried to breathe. Tried to think. If they saw me on that footage, it was over. I needed to get rid of the evidence, the uniform, the keys, everything. But it was too late. The building felt like a cage, every exit guarded by security. That night, I walked home in the freezing rain, my shoes soaked, my mind spinning. When I got to my apartment, there was an envelope under my door. No name. No return address. I picked it up with trembling hands and opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper. And one sentence written in bold black ink. We know what you did. I sat on the floor, clutching that note with shaking hands. Truth has a price. Those words echoed in my mind like a warning bell. They were right. Truth does have a price. And I had just paid mine. I looked around my tiny apartment, peeling paint on the walls, the hum of an old refrigerator, the sound of distant traffic outside the window. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For years, this was my safe place. My quiet corner of the world where no one noticed me, where no one cared. Now, even these walls felt like they were closing in. I stood up slowly, walked to the mirror, and stared at the tired woman looking back at me. Wrinkles, rough hands, an old cleaning uniform. For years, that uniform made me invisible. People looked right through me, as if I didn't exist. But tonight, that same invisible woman brought down a man who thought he was untouchable. The headlines were everywhere. Powerful attorney exposed in major corruption scandal. His photo, front page. His empire, falling apart. And the man who once laughed and said, "She's nothing." He lost everything. Because of someone he didn't even see. And that's the part that makes me smile, not out of revenge, but because of what it means. Because the world needs to hear this. You should never underestimate a person. Not the woman cleaning your office at midnight. Not the man fixing your car. Not the waitress serving your coffee. Because you don't know their story. You don't know what they've seen. And you sure as hell don't know what they're capable of. People love to measure worth by titles and money. They think power only comes in expensive suits and corner offices. But real power? Real power is quiet. It doesn't need a spotlight. Sometimes, it wears old shoes and rubber gloves. I thought about all the times I kept my head down. All the times they ignored me, laughed near me, talked like I wasn't even human. And I realized something. Respect is a choice. It's free. But arrogance? Arrogance will cost you everything. So here's the truth they never saw coming. The janitor you ignore today might be the reason your secrets burn tomorrow. That nobody you laugh at might become the voice that destroys your empire. And maybe, just maybe, that's how justice works. Not in courtrooms, not in boardrooms, but in moments like this, when someone who had nothing decides to risk everything to do what's right. I walked back to the kitchen, looked at that note again, and whispered. You wanted invisible? Not anymore. Because tonight, I proved something, to them, and to myself. Power isn't about money. Power isn't about status. Power is the courage to stand up when no one expects you to. So, the next time you think someone is beneath you, remember this. The person you underestimate might be the strongest person in the room. And that, nobody. That was me. And people like me. We're the reason men like him fall. Because the truth may cost everything. But silence? Silence costs even more.